Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you how to play a fingerstyle arrangement of Married Life, the soundtrack from the movie Up. So let's get into it. So for this arrangement, we are in standard tuning and you need to put a capo on the first fret of your guitar. Also, all the tabs for this are available on my Patreon page. If you want them, check out the link down below. It really helps support my channel. So I've divided this song into a few different parts. Let's start with the intro. It sounds like this. So we start off with this chord. So here you have the 6th fret of the D string, the 6th fret if you count from the capo. So you have the 6th fret of the D string which you're holding with the little finger, the 4th fret of the G string which you're holding with the index finger, and the 5th fret of the B string which you're holding with the middle finger. And you're using this finger combination because later on you'll need your ring finger to play the next note after this chord. So the chord should sound like this. And the way you play it is you first play the bass note, the low E string which is open, and then you pluck the chord, where you're plucking the D, G and B strings all together, like that. And you do that again, like that. So while you pluck the chord the second time, before that you have to slightly mute the chord, like that. So if you notice there, I'm slightly lifting the chord up so it gets muted, and then I'm playing it for the second time, like that. So altogether you get this. And then you change to this chord. So here you're changing from this chord to this one. So you're bringing your ring finger onto the 6th fret of the A string. You're keeping the little finger on the 6th fret of the D string from the previous chord. You have the 4th fret of the G string and the 4th fret of the B string with the index finger like that, barred. So the way you play it is like this. So you first plug the A string, which is now the bass note, and then you plug the D, G and B strings together 2 times like that, just like earlier. So there again, notice that I'm muting the chord before I'm plucking it the second time, like that. So altogether you get this. I'll do that again really slow. And then you change to this chord. So here you have another minor chord again. So you have the 4th fret of the A string, the 6th fret of the D string, 6th fret of the G string, and the 5th fret of the B string. And similarly on the right hand you have the same picking pattern. You play the A string first, the bass note. Then you plug the chord 2 times, the D, G and B strings together, like that. So all together from the start. And then you change back to the previous chord. So here you're back on this chord where you have the 6th fret of the A string, 6th fret of the D string, and 5th fret of the G and B strings with the bar. So all together again from the start. I'll do that again, try to play it with me. I'll do it really slow. And after that you basically repeat this one more time. And in the end, on the last chord, you just play this, where you're plucking the bass note first, and then you're plucking the D, G and B strings all together, and just that. You leave it there, you don't pluck it the second time. So all together from the start you have this. So some of you might find it a little difficult to smoothly change between these three chords at first. That's okay. Just practice the chord changes really slowly and you'll get there. So I'm going to play the whole intro once again. So it sounds like this. So you start by playing this. So you start by playing the 5th fret of the B string first. Then you play the 4th fret of the high E string. And then you play the 5th fret of the B string again. And then you change to this chord. So here you're holding the 6th fret of the D string, the 4th fret of the G string and the 4th fret of the B string with the index finger, like that. So on the right hand you start by playing the low E string which is open and the B string together. You plug them both together and then you plug this part of the chord where you're plucking the D string and the G string together 2 times like that. So you get this all together. I'll do that again. And then you change to this part. So there you're still holding on to the previous chord and you're just adding your little finger onto the note on the 6th fret of the A string. On the right hand you play this. So you plug the A string first and then you plug the D and G strings together. And then you have this part. So there you add your middle finger onto the note on the 5th fret of the B string. And then you play the note on the 4th fret of the high E string. Then you lift this finger up and play the 4th fret of the B string. Like that. I'll do that again really slow. So all together from the start, so far you have this. And then you change to this chord. So here you're changing to this chord where you're holding the 2nd fret of the D string, the 1st fret of the G string and the 2nd fret of the B string. So on the right hand you start by playing this, where you plug the low E string which is open and the B string together. And then you have this part, where you plug the D string, then the B string, then the open high E string, and then the B string. Like that. One more time. And then you change to this chord. So here you're just lifting this finger up, so you let go of the note on the 2nd fret of the B string, so now you have the open B string. On the right hand you play this, where you're plucking the low E string which is open and the open B string together. And then you do this, where you're plucking these two, the 2nd fret of the D string and the 1st fret of the G string together 2 times. So altogether you have this. One more time. So far from the start we have this. And after that we have this new part. So here you start by playing the open B string first, then you change to this chord. So here you have to bar across the second fret starting from the low E string all the way up till the high E string, and you also have to hold the note on the 4th fret of the high E string like that. And on the right hand you plug the low E string and the high E string together, and then you switch to this chord. So here you're adding the ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string, and you're adding the middle finger on the 3rd fret of the G string. And while keeping the bar with the index finger, on the right hand you play this, where you plug the D, G, B and high E strings all together. So altogether you get this. I'll do that again. And after that you add this part, where you're just plucking the D string and the G string while holding on to the same chord. Plug them both together. So altogether you end up with this. And then you have this part. So there you play the B string once while holding on to the same chord. So you have the 2nd fret of the B string there. And then you add your little finger onto the 4th fret of the high E string, and you plug the low E string and the high E string together. Like that. And after that you have this part. So there you let go of this note, so you have the open high E string there now, and you plug the G, B and high E strings together while holding on to the chord. And then you add your little finger onto the note on the 5th fret of the B string, and you plug the D, G and B strings together. These three basically. So again from the start you have this. And then you have this part. So there you're plucking the low E string and the B string while holding the chord. So you have the 2nd fret for both of them here with the bar. Plug them both together, the low E string and the B string. And then you do this, where you're plucking the D and G strings together 2 times. Like that. So all together again from the start. And then you change to this part. So here you start with this chord where you're holding the 2nd fret of the D string and the 3rd fret of the G string. You plug the D string and then the G string. Then you add your little finger onto the note on the 5th fret of the B string. And then you remove your index finger from the 2nd fret of the D string to the 2nd fret of the high E string. And play the note on the 2nd fret of the high E string. And in the end you play this note again, the note on the B string. Like that. So again from the very beginning we have this so far. And then you change to this chord. So you have this part now. So you start with this. So here you have a B major chord where you're holding the 2nd fret of the A string, 4th fret of the D string, 4th fret of the G string, and the 4th fret of the B string. So on the right hand you start by plucking the A string and the B string together. Then you plug the D and G strings together, like that. And then you have this part. So here you're slightly changing the chord, you're changing the position of the index finger from the 2nd fret of the A string to the 2nd fret of the high E string. On the right hand you're playing this. So you're plucking the A string, which is open now. Then you're plucking the D and G strings together. And then you're doing this, where you're plucking the B string, then the high E string, and then the B string again. So all together from the start. And then you change to this. So here you're changing the chord to this. So now you have the 4th fret of the low E string, the 4th fret of the D string, 4th fret of the G string, and the 4th fret of the B string. So you start by plucking the low E string and the G string together first. And then you play this, where you're plucking the D string, G string, B string, and then the G string again. I'll do that again. So all together again from the start. And then you have this. So there you're changing to this chord now, where you're holding the 2nd fret of the low E string and the 2nd fret of the G string. On the right hand you plug the low E string and the G string together. And then you add your ring finger onto the note on the 4th fret of the D string and play that note. One more time. So all together again from the start. So I'll play the whole thing again from the very beginning till this point. So we have this so far. And then you have this part. So you start by playing the low E string, which is open, and you keep that ringing, and then you have this part. So you start with this chord first, where you have the 2nd fret of the D string and the 1st fret of the G string. Plug the D and G strings together. Then you change to this, where you have the 4th fret of the D string and the 2nd fret of the G string. Plug them both together, D and G strings. Then you change to this chord, which is basically the same shape, but you just move it 2 frets up. So now you have the 6th of the D and the 4th fret of the G string. So all together again. And then you have this part. So there you change to this chord shape again. So here you have the 7th fret of the D string and the 6th fret of the G string. And then you move it 2 frets up, the same shapes. So now you have the 9th fret of the D string and the 8th fret of the G string. Like that. I'll do that again from the start. One more time. And all this you have to do right after you play the low E string. Keep that ringing. I'll do that again. And then you have this part. So here you start with this chord, where you have the 2nd fret of the A string and the first fret of the G string. So on the right hand, while holding the chord, you play the A string first, then you plug the G string and the open B string together. So you have this, and then you add this part where you're adding the ring finger and the little finger on the second fret of the G string and the second fret of the B string together like that. And you're playing the G string and the B string after adding those two notes. So you have this. I'll do that again. And then you change to this, where you're just shifting this shape up 2 frets. So now you have the 4th fret of the G string and the 4th fret of the B string, and you're plucking the G and B strings together like that. So altogether from the start so far we have this. So that's the entire first part. After that we have the second part, which sounds like this. So we start off exactly the same way that we played earlier. It's exactly the same till there, and then you have this part. So earlier you were playing this, but now you have this part. So we start with the exact same chord shape. You have the 2nd fret of the D string, 1st fret of the G string, and the 2nd fret of the B string. On the right hand you play this. So there we start by plucking the low E string, which is open, and the B string together. Then we play the D string, then we play the B string, and then the high E string. I'll do that again. And then we immediately change to this. So we let go of this chord shape and we have to hold the 9th fret of the B string now with the ring finger. And after that, change to this shape. So here we have the 7th fret of the low E string and the 11th fret of the high E string. So I'll do that again from the previous chord. Like that. So again from the start. And then we have this part. So right after we played this chord, now you play this note. So you play the note on the 9th fret of the high E string. And then you change to this. So there you're holding the 9th fret of the A string, the 9th fret if you count from the capo, and the 12th fret of the high E string. You play both of them together, the A and the high E string together. Plug them together like that. And then you change to this chord. So there you're barring across the 9th fret of the guitar, starting from the A string all the way up till the high E string with the index finger like that. And you have your ring finger on the 11th fret of the D string, and you have your little finger on the 11th fret of the high E string. And on the right hand you play this. So there I'm plucking the D string, G string and the high E string together. Then I'm lifting this finger up, so now you have the 9th fret of the high E string. and I'm plucking the D, G and high E string again. I'll do that again. So altogether you get this. And after that you have this part. So there, while holding the same exact chord where you're barring across the 9th fret and holding the note on the 11th fret of the D string, now you play this, where you're plucking the 9th fret of the A string and the 9th fret of the B string together. You're playing that with the bar on the left hand. So you pluck the A and B strings together. And then you add your little finger onto the note on the 11th fret of the B string. And right after you add your little finger on the 11th fret of the B string, you play this. So first you plug the D, G and B strings together. And then you plug just the D and G strings, these two. So altogether you get this. And then you have this part. So again, while holding that chord where you're barring across the 9th fret and you're holding the 11th fret of the D string, now you play this, where you're plucking the high E string. So you're playing this note, which you're basically holding with the bar. And then you're adding your little finger onto the 12th fret of the high E string. And then you're playing that with the 9th fret of the A string. So you're plucking the high E string and the A string together. Like that. And after that you play this. So there you're basically plucking these two, where you're holding the 11th fret of the D string and the 9th fret of the G string with the bar, and you're plucking the D and G strings together. So altogether you get this. And then you have this part. So basically you're letting go of this note and you're playing the A string and the high E string together. Like that. So you're basically playing these two notes, the 9th fret of the A string and the 9th fret of the high E string. And in the end you're just playing this. So there you're plucking these two, the D and G strings. So altogether the whole part on this chord again sounds like this. And after that we have this part. So there you start by playing the note on the 12th fret of the high E string, the 12th fret if you count from the capo. Then you play the 14th fret of the high E string with the same finger, and then you come back down to the 12th fret. Like that. And then you have this. So there you're holding the 9th fret of the D string and the 11th fret of the high E string, and you're plucking both of them together. The D string and the high E string. So all together. And then you change to this. So here you're changing to this note on the 12th fret of the A string, 12th fret if you count from the capo, and you play the note and then you do this. So there you're playing the 11th fret of the high E string and the 14th fret of the high E string. So you're playing 11, 14, 11. So altogether you have this. And then you change to this part. So there you change to this chord where you're now holding the 11th fret of the A string and the 12th fret of the B string. You start by plucking the A string and the B string together. And then you add your ring finger onto the note on the 11th fret of the high E string, and now you play this, where you're playing the B string, then the high E string, then the B string again. So first you plug the chord, and then you play that part. I'll do that again. And then you change to this chord, where you're just moving the same shape down 2 frets to the 9th fret of the A string and the 10th fret of the B string, and you plug them together. So all together, so far you have this. And then you have this part. So here you start by playing the 6th fret of the G string, then the 8th fret of the G string, then the 9th fret of the G string, and then the 7th fret of the B string. Like that. So that's the entire second part. I'll play the whole thing once from the start till this point. It sounds like this. And after that we have the third part, which sounds like this. So right after you played this in the end of the second part, you switch to this chord. So here you bar across the 7th fret starting from the low E string all the way up till the high E string with the index finger like that. And you also have to hold the 9th fret of the D string with the ring finger and hold the 8th fret of the G string with the middle finger. So you start by playing this. So you first plug the low E string and the high E string together, and then you plug the D and G strings together 2 times, like that. And then you have this. So you plug the low E string and the B string now, and then you plug the D and G strings together 2 times like that. And right after that you have this. So you start by adding your little finger on the 9th fret of the B string and you play that note, and then you shift 1 fret up to the 10th fret of the B string, and now you play the low E string and the 10th fret of the B string together, like that. And then you have this. So there you move back down to the 9th fret of the B string and you plug these 3, the D, G and B strings, this part of the chord, you plug them all together, and then you lift this finger up, so now you have the barred note on the B string, and then you play this, where you plug the D and G strings together first and then the B string, like that. I'll do the whole thing again really slow. One more time. So the whole thing from the start sounds like this. And then you have this part. So there you're adding your little finger on the note on the 9th fret of the high E string, and on the right hand you plug the low E string and the high E string together. And then you move your little finger to the 9th fret of the B string, and then you play this. So there you're basically playing the D, G and B strings together first, and then you lift this finger up, so now you have the barred note on the B string, the 7th fret here, and now you played the D, G and B strings again. So you get this. So altogether you have this from the start. And then you have this part. So here we start by playing this. So you first plug the low E string, which is open, and the note on the 4th fret of the high E string. And then you play the D string and the G string 2 times together, like that. And after that you have this. So you let go of this note, so now you have the open high E string. Plug the low E string and the open high E string together, both of them are open. And then you do this, where you're plucking the D and G strings together 2 times. Like that. So altogether you get this. And then you have this part. So you first plug the 2nd fret of the high E string, you play that with the ring finger. And then you have the 4th fret of the high E string, you plug that with the open low E string. And then you have this. So there you're plucking the 2nd fret of the high E string with these two, the 2nd fret of the D string and the 1st fret of the G string. So on the right hand you're plucking the D, G and high E strings together. And after that you let go, so now you have the open high E string. And you plug the D, G and the open high E string. So altogether you have this. And from the start, and then you have this part. So here you have this chord where you're barring across the 1st fret, and then you have the ring finger on the 3rd fret of the D string, and you have the middle finger on the 2nd fret of the B string, and you have the little finger on the 4th fret of the high E string. So you first plug the low E string and the high E string together, and then you lift this finger up and you plug this part of the chord, where you're plucking the D string, G string, B string and the high E string. And after that you place the little finger on the note on the 4th fret of the G string, and you play just that note. So altogether you get this. One more time. And then we have this part. So here we have this chord, which is exactly the same as what we had here. So you bar across the 2nd fret of the guitar, and you have the ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string and the middle finger on the 3rd fret of the G string. So you start by playing this. So you plug the low E string and the G string together, and then you plug the D, G and B strings together. So you get this. And after that you plug these two, the D and G strings together, like that. So all together. One more time. And then you have this, where you're playing the 4th fret of the high E string with the little finger, and then you're letting go. So you're plucking the 2nd fret of the low E string and the 2nd fret of the high E string together. Like that. So all together from the start. And then you have this part, where you're plucking the D, G and B strings together. So you have this part of the chord basically. So you first plug the D, G and B strings, and then you add your little finger on the 5th fret of the B string and plug this part, the D, G and B strings again. So all together from the start. And then you have this part. So there you basically have the 2nd fret barred, and the ring finger on the 4th fret of the D string and the middle finger on the 3rd fret of the G string. On the right hand you start by playing the low E string and the high E string together first. Plug them both together. Then you plug the D and G strings together 2 times. And then you have this. So there you're plucking the low E string and the B string together, and then you're plucking the D and G strings together 2 times. So all together. And if you play the whole part on this chord, and then you have this. So here you switch to this chord, which is basically a B7 chord. Here I'm holding the 7th fret of the low E string with the thumb, the 7th fret of the D and the G strings together with the index finger like that, and the 7th fret of the B string with the middle finger, and the 8th fret of the G string with the ring finger. So here you start by playing the low E string, D string and the G string together with a roll, like that. And then you play just the B string. And then you have this, where you're playing 7th fret of the G string, then the 8th fret of the G string. And then you have this, where you're just playing the 7th fret of the D string and the 8th fret of the D string, just like earlier. I'll do that again. And then you change to this chord. So here you have a B augmented chord. So here you're holding the notes on the 9th fret of the D string, 8th fret of the G string, 8th fret of the B string, and the 7th fret of the high E string. And on the right hand, you just play this chord with a roll. So you're playing the D, G, B, and high E strings together with a roll like that. So altogether, you get this. So that's the whole third part. I'll play the whole thing once. It sounds like this. And after that you have the ending, which is basically like the first part that you played. So in the end there, I'm just playing the starting melody. I'm playing the 5th fret of the B string, then the 4th fret of the high E string, 5th fret of the B string, and then the 4th fret of the B string. And then I'm forming this chord, which is an E major 7 chord. So here you have the 6th fret of the D string, and the 4th fret of the G string, and the 4th fret of the B string. On the right hand, you plug the low E string first, and then you play the D, G, and B strings. So you get this. So that's the whole song. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this helped. And a very special thanks to all the people who support me on my Patreon page, who make it possible for me to continue making these videos. All the tabs for this video and all my other videos are available on my Patreon page. If you'd like to see more videos like this one, then subscribe to my channel. Also, if you have any questions or requests for song tutorials, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.